to DW's Stand Up. We do not stand up for what we believe. Who will? This is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. My sponsor helps keep this podcast on the air. If you are a leader, professional, or an entrepreneur who is feeling frustrated or anxious because you're not performing at the level you know that you're capable of, then you need to unlock your life today and get your complimentary strategy session with Coach Kim at unlockyourlifecoach.com. And to my audience, I want to thank each of you for taking the time to watch or listen to this podcast once again. And I have a very special guest today. And Mark, you're going to have to make sure I'm saying your name. I kind of mess up your last name, Mark. I know it's Meuser. Say that for me.
It's actually Mark Meuser.
Meuser.
With Meuser, you are more sure about a Republican form of government.
All right, Mark Meuser.
Meuser.
See, I'm not going to say it right. I'm just going to say Mark.
I will answer to anything almost.
Okay. Mark is a native Californian with a proven record of fighting for our constitutional rights. He is running for the office of the United States Senate, and he graduated with honors from Brook College of Law. 2017, he joined the Dillon Law Group. He had the privilege of protecting our First Amendment rights. Now, Mark was also involved in a lawsuit against Governor Gavin Newsom when California tried to remove President Trump's name from the primary ballot. Over the last year, Mark has been involved in 22 lawsuits brought against Gavin Newsom. Mark has successfully competed in several Ironman competitions, so he'll have to tell us about that because he's definitely a fighter, someone we need in the United States Senate. Welcome, Mark, to DW's Stand Up.
Hey, thanks for having me here today.
Yes, I'm so happy we finally get to connect. Now, I want to start out with your personal life because I was very intrigued by you as a young man, 12 years old and younger, starting out. You were out there working as a young man, operating a cherry stand and just working as an entrepreneur, as a young man, owning a pizza restaurant, taking care of. And I mean, you just did a little bit of everything. Can you tell us just a little, kind of expound just a little bit on your life as how you got started and why you're such a fighter? Because you've been fighting your whole life.
Well, thank you very much. Yes, as you mentioned, from a very young age, I have been an entrepreneur. I mean, my first jobs were, 10, 11 years old, working in strawberry and cherry fields. And at the, age of 12, I realized, wait a second, I'm picking cherries or strawberries, and I might make 10, 15, 20 bucks. But wait a second, if I spend a couple hours in the morning and I pick for myself, and then I go down to the street stand corner and sell it, I'm making 40 or 50 bucks a day. And it's like, wait a second, I like this a lot better. This is much, it's a whole different environment. It's just the concept of, wait a second, I don't have to work all day and just walk away with 10, 15 bucks in the field. We can actually there are ways to do more, less work and actually make more money. And it was fun. It was a good life lesson. Those were my summer jobs. Over the winter, what I would often do, or actually in the spring, what I often did was we'd go to the auction and buy bummer sheep or pigs, and then I would be feeding them and raising them. And, it was just a life of entrepreneur. And by the time I was 15, I was management at a pizza restaurant. And by the time I got to age 21, I opened up my own pizza restaurant. But I really knew that, business was not it's a great way to make a paycheck, but it was not that burden, that calling in my life. And so while I was running my own business, owning my own pizza restaurant, I went to law school. And, that first semester of law school, I was, working in the pizza restaurant 70 hours a week and then doing law school in addition. It was, I was lucky if I got 3 hours of sleep a day, and it was hard, but
yeah, well, that's great. That's great. Well, that's what we need, people with a work ethic and in the United States government, and you have that. So now, who had the most influence on you as a young person?
That's a good question. I'm not sure that I know the answer to that question. You would, and since I don't know the answer to that, that probably means it's my parents more than anybody.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I can't directly go out and say this one person or that one person had an influence. As I was, going through school, the stories of George Washington and Abraham Lincoln and men like Webster and Calhoun and Clay, reading the stories of the early founding fathers and that second generation of founding fathers, they just always intrigued me, and a desire for good government, the desire of understanding statesmen who put the needs of the people first, not the special interest first.
Yes.
I mean, that was just something that, from 8, 9 years old, that it just kind of, that my education, when I picked up those stories, that just really stuck with me.
Okay, great. So you think that influenced you going to law school?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Wow. So that just shows you how important education is, and the quality education that we get our kids, and not fill their heads with a bunch of mush and what they're getting in school now, with our kids being, stuff that they're learning or that they're being taught in school, which they have no control over in the public schools and even some of the private schools. So you're a perfect example of why we need quality education and teaching our kids about the history of this beautiful country.
Yeah, if you don't learn from your history, you're bound to repeat it.
That's right. That's right. Now, I was looking over the duties of the position of for the U.S. Senate. Now, what difference do you think you'll make as a U.S. Senate?
I think in order to answer that question, we actually have to back up and go a little bit more deeper into what I've done over the last couple of years.
Okay.
As you mentioned, I have sued Gavin Newsom 22 times. We
Yes.
carried cases all the way up to the Supreme Court. We have a case currently working the way through the Ninth Circuit. Many of our cases we ended up dismissing after Gavin changed the executive orders that were, shutting down beaches or shutting down barbers, or, some regulation regarding the business, we sued and they ended up being allowed to operate. And so there's been a lot of lawsuits, but then in addition to that, we were suing in other states. And I was involved in the OSHA vaccine mandate case that the Supreme Court ended up overturning. And as I was looking at this whole problem, what became abundantly clear is our Constitution guarantees to us a Republican form of government. And a Republican form of government is we elect our representatives and they pass the laws which bind us. In a representative form of government, you do not elect your unelected public bureaucrats. And when you allow the public bureaucrats to pass regulations that now have the full force of law, we are no longer in a Republican form of government. When you allow executives like mayors, governors, or presidents to enact and enforce by executive order, you're no longer living in a Republican form of government. And if you study case law, what you find is that the courts refuse, they say that is a political issue. What is a Republican form of government? They say that that is a political issue. It's not an issue that you can litigate in courts. And so even no matter, the whole time I've been doing all these litigations, an argument, the most fundamental argument that I can make is Gavin Newsom can't do this because it violates a Republican form of government, or Biden can't do this because it violates a Republican form of government, or Eric Garcetti can't do this because it violates a Republican form of government. That argument is not even available to me as an attorney, because it is the courts have said that that only belongs in the US Congress and US Senate. And so as such, in understanding that the root of these problems that we are dealing with is that our politicians have realized that the courts are not going to rein them in for violating a Republican form of government, a right that's guaranteed to us by the Constitution. That means that we have to deal with it in the United States Congress and the United States Senate. And so in 2018, I had been the Republican candidate for Secretary of State. And so as such, I had a statewide network. I had donors who were used to contributing. They knew who I was. I have volunteers across the state. I have groups across the state that have had me speak to them. So I had a very good statewide name ID. And since a US senator has a lot of influence on the direction of legislation and has a louder and larger platform, it became clear to me that it was important to run for US Senate so that way we can rein in the unelected bureaucracy. We can rein in the executive administration that is basically making the laws and enforcing the laws. That is unacceptable in a Republican form of government. And the sooner we get back to that Republican form of government, the sooner it is that we, the people, actually have more say about our lives.
Well, Mark, I hope and pray you are elected. Because I tell you, when I look at some of the stuff that's going on in our government, it just makes you want to pull your hair out, and that goes unchallenged. And it's like, dictatorship, more or less.
It's beyond a dictatorship of what we dealt with the last couple of years. I mean, our Constitution is under a full onslaught, a full attack that we're dealing with right now.
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately, that is so true. Now you joined the Harmy Dillon's Law Group in 2017, and I know that you're working on a lot of cases with that group as well, and also working to protect the First Amendment privileges of the American people. This is what I hope and pray that the people of California will wake up to, and that they're educated to. And I know I want you to talk about what you're doing to get yourself elected, regardless of party. So talk about that, your work with the Dillon Law Group.
Well, I mean, as a constitutional election law attorney, I have the ability every day to get up and get in there and fight for our fundamental rights as Americans. When it's election law, I'm dealing with your First Amendment right to vote. And I'm dealing right now with cases across the country where that fundamental right has been jeopardized, or people have been deprived of that right. And so I work on election law cases. You mentioned the one when Gavin Newsom tried to remove Donald Trump from the primary ballot, and we fought that and we won. When they tried to remove Larry Elder from the recall ballot, it wasn't just Larry Elder. There were multiple people there, and I came in I didn't come in on behalf of Larry Elder. I came in on behalf of the voters of the state of California, and there was a couple different people in there who had been removed because of arbitrary decisions made by the Secretary of State that did not follow California law. And I came in, made the constitutional arguments that needed to be made so that the people of the state of California had a choice in who they were going to be voting for. And so that's what I get to do on a daily basis. I get to wake up, I get to fight for people's First Amendment rights, their Second Amendment rights, their right of liberty, their 14th Amendment rights, and that is, that's the joy of, being a constitutional lawyer, of being an election political lawyer, is coming in there and, even though there may not be an election tomorrow, doing work that actually protects people today.
Yeah. Now, and along that line, I was looking, and I pay close attention to what's happening in the news cycle. Now, I was looking at the illegal collection of people who are purchasing guns by the Biden administration. They literally created a database. is that something that the US Senate would rein in? Would they be able to pull that back? Because they're literally, I mean, they've always, for the last few years, tried to take people's gun rights. They just don't want people to own guns. And I'm not talking about criminals, I'm talking about law-abiding citizens. They want to take our guns. We know what happens to societies when the government takes your guns. We be like some of these countries, you can't defend yourself when they come for you. So what could be done to stop them from taking this information, this database that they have created, and facial recognition for the IRS, all this craziness that's going on right now? Is that something that the Senate would work on, should be doing to rein them in?
Absolutely. I mean, the unelected bureaucracy needs to be reined in, and the people who are supposed to do that are your US congressman and your US senator. They've given too much discretion to these unelected bureaucracies and given them too much money to just use to find new ways to deprive people of their constitutional rights. And it's going to be important that when we get back to DC, that we start re-examining the budgets and start seeing what they're doing with our money. Because if we keep spending more money than we got in, you know, when you spend more money than you get, you add debt. Yeah. When you have debt, you pay interest. And now you have to bring in more money to pay your debt and pay the larger interest payment, right? I mean, we all know it. You cannot permanently go into a negative balance. And unfortunately, the United States of America has been in this negative debt cycle for a very long time. I think it's back in the 20s was the last time we actually saw a black number on our balance sheet. Yeah. And, you know, we got to stop this. You know, we got to stop the cycle of printing more money, because all it's doing is when you print more money, you create inflation. Now people have to go get more money. If you look at the dollar buying power, the inflation doesn't, you know, it hurts the lower class. It hurts the middle class. The rich, they figure out a way to make investments and make it work, but your dollar doesn't go as far. You know, even though you now get a bigger, you know, salary, all you're doing is you're paying more for your groceries. You're paying more for your hamburger at the fast food store. So we got to start reining in the budget. You know, do we need to spend as much money on foreign aid as we are? Every item on the budget needs to be carefully looked at. Okay, if you're depriving people of their constitutional rights, maybe you have too much free time on your hand, and maybe we need to pare back how much money you have, so that way you don't, you know, that you keep to the task and duties that Congress has actually given to you. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And, you know, when I look at what's happening with the COVID restrictions, do you think that wearing a mask and people being fired from jobs and being forced to take the shots and all that stuff, with a different Congress, with a different Senate, is that something that can be rolled back, where people can be given their lives back? And I look at the military, I say, wait, these people serve, yes. And you know, Mark, I heard someone say, well, you know, when you go in the military owns your body. I said, well, yeah. I said, but this I'm not going to call it vaccine. The shot that they're giving people is experimental. So are you military people not allowed to not accept an experimental shot, something that can be harmful to them, as well as harmful to kids, in which they want to even start giving it to babies as young as 6 months old, and boys with myocarditis, I'm not saying it right, the heart condition for young men, forced to take that in school. That's a big thing that I'm very concerned about, the COVID-19 restrictions and the children wearing masks all day, which we know they're breathing in that carbon dioxide, which is harmful. And I mean, that's just a whole big ball of wax. So I know you have some ideas on that, if you would. Well, that's, you know, you've touched on multiple topics there. And the problem that we have right now is that you basically have the people who, because of the system that we have created, you have Dr. Fauci, who's the public voice for these vaccines, who's getting paid by the royalties by the vaccines.
Yep.
And then he has undue influence over the budgets of those people who approve the vaccines.
Mm.
And you have a court who's supposed to be calling the balls and strikes, who basically are washing their hands, and they say, we don't want any part of this. And that's kind of the whole problem of what we have dealt with over the last couple of years, is that the fundamental rights of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness, the courts have been unwilling to really enforce. You go back over 100 years ago, there was a case out of San Francisco where several people had the bubonic plague. I mean, that deadly disease that wiped out large portions of the world's population over 500 years. Several people had bubonic plague in San Francisco. And the public health officer came in and said, we're going to shut down Chinatown. You can't go to work. You can't go to school. You cannot travel. You cannot leave. And the courts came in and said, time out. Public health officer, you do not have the authority to deprive people of their life, their liberty, their pursuit of happiness. That is what the courts used to do. They used to protect it. They said, if you know that somebody actually has it, yeah, you can quarantine them. That's within your right. But you can't shut down an entire 15 blocks just because a couple people are sick. And unfortunately, what ended up happening is under COVID, all of a sudden, public health officers, I mean, I've read their manuals. Their manuals said, you don't have this authority. But what they did is they came in and they said, we are going to start deciding who's essential, who's not. We're going to start saying what you can do and what you cannot do. And everybody's presumed sick. And there's no way you can say, well, I'm okay, I could go to work. It just was upside down what we did. And when I went into my first case, it was like, hey, this is an open shut case, Your Honor. They don't have this authority. And the judges started making up new standards. He had to go all the way to the United States Supreme Court for the court to say, there is no pandemic exception to the United States Constitution. And, and we're slowly getting courts to start reining in the bureaucracy. I saw a court decision the other day out in New York where the court basically said, public health officer, you don't have this authority. This belongs to the legislature. And masked and lifted the mask order. The very next day, the Court of Appeals put the order back down in place. So even when you get a good victory every now and then, you're immediately having to defend it at the next level. And so we have to start, as a United States Senator, you do have the ability to confirm judges. And one of the things that is going to be very clear in my mind when I'm questioning potential judges, whether they're for the United States Supreme Court or a U.S. District Court judge, is do they even understand what a Republican form of government is? And are they willing to defend that? Are they willing to protect somebody's life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, regardless of what some bureaucrat says? And if they're not willing to defend people's fundamental constitutional rights, then I'm sorry, you do not deserve to be appointed to a lifetime tenure in the federal judiciary. And unfortunately, the courts in the last couple of years have let down the servicemen. They've let down the toddler because they've been refusing to really take a close look. I mean, we've been presenting them the medical testimony of what's going on, and these judges just seem to think that they have to give wide deference to whatever government bureaucrat says. Why? Nobody elected them. Why do we have to listen to that person? Okay. I mean, it's like, let's think of let's say you're going to play a basketball game, right? And the teams know who their official is, but there's some loudmouth up in the stand yelling, that was a foul, blowing a whistle. And now all of a sudden we have to follow what that person in the stand says. No, that's not how it's supposed to work. Our duly elected officials are supposed to pass the rules by which we are governed. And we got to go back to the basics. We got to go back to the fundamentals. And it starts at the United States Senate and the US Congress, where we're going to have to rein in the unelected bureaucracy, where we're going to have to pare down their budgets, where we're going to have to make sure that we actually start properly examining the belief and the government, the understanding that people have in what a constitutional government is before they get a position on the judiciary. It's not enough to just focus in on what their political beliefs are. We have to now start getting to the fundamental beliefs as to what type of government they actually believe is proper. Do they even understand what a constitutional republic is?
Yeah, I think you'd be the perfect one to kind of teach them that. I think you.
I'm gonna do my best.
Yes, I think you would, Mark. I think you would be an asset to the United States Senate. So
well,
I'm gonna definitely put you high on the prayer list. And
thank you.
Yes, we definitely need someone like you in that U.S. Senate. And as for wearing mask, I looked at when you were talking, I was thinking about Virginia. The people of Virginia elected a whole new slate of officers there, and they're still forcing the children to come to school and wear a mask and putting restrictions on them, even fining them.
And we saw that Governor Youngquist is actually joining that lawsuit with the parents and suing the school boards that are making these arbitrary and capricious decisions. It is tyranny. It is tyranny what is going on right now.
Yeah, and it's going on throughout I'm just amazed at how people don't appreciate the freedom that they've been given in this country. I say that all the time. I say, we live in America. When we look at the Constitution, when we look at what God gave us, and when we look at people living in Cuba and Venezuela and China and all these other places where they don't have a Constitution, they don't have what we have here in this country, but yet we throw it away and not even appreciate it, maybe not even understand what we have and the privilege that we have that God has given us. People just kind of take that for granted. And it's pretty sad.
Very sad.
When I look at the education of the children, that just really just gets me how we could put all this craziness into the children's mind. We look at the sex ed and critical race and ethnic studies and all this stuff, which has nothing to do with making sure our kids turn out to be good citizens.
I mean, the problem is, we've probably all seen it on the internet, a picture of a white toddler and a black toddler, and they see each other and they run, and they go give themselves a big hug.
Yeah.
You know what? Racism is not, you're not born a racist.
No.
You are educated.
Yep.
To be a racist.
That's right.
And when you, at a very young age, are teaching people, critical race theory, when you are focusing in on differences, you are training racism. We all, all men are created equal. We got to focus our, reading, writing, and arithmetic. You go in there and you study the life of Frederick Douglass. When he had the opportunity to read, to write, he was able to rise above, and that's where he had his true freedom. And he advised presidents of the United States of America. He influenced the Black population, but he also influenced the white population because he was given the opportunity to be educated, and he lived as a slave. But he rose above it.
Yes.
And, and he called Lincoln out. He's, Lincoln, you can't do this. Because of what you're doing, this is what the response is.
Mm-hmm.
And, he had to educate. And the same thing is true today. When we focus on our differences, we become focused on our differences. Instead, we need to be focused on what unites us. The Olympics, I remember as a kid, it didn't matter what the color of the skin was of the athlete. If they were wearing the stars and stripes,
yes,
they were American heroes.
Yes.
I remember the 1980s, the 84s, the 88 Olympics. I didn't see color. I saw Americans.
Yes.
But now we spend so much time talking about, well, this is the first Black this, or this is the first Hispanic this, or this. And we spend so much time dividing that there's so much tension going on. And we forget the real value of the Olympics is that it is an opportunity for all Americans, regardless of party, to be cheering for the same thing. Because in politics, it's Republican versus Democrats, conservative versus liberal. But it's supposed to be when we get there, oh, it's the United States of America taking on Germany. Let's go America.
Yes.
But when our newscasters are spending so much time talking about, oh, how evil this is or how bad this is, when we're creating strife and turmoil in there, it's no longer that pure event where we could unite the American people around something positive. When we had World War II, everybody was united for a common cause. And it's, yes, politics are always going to be divided. You go back to the 1800s where you had John Adams versus Thomas Jefferson. Remember, those two people signed the Declaration of Independence together. They made us a country. And the most ugly election in United States history is the election of 1800 between Thomas Jefferson and John Adams. Elections are nasty, ugly stuff. We don't need to be making our sports that way. Hey, somebody may be a LA Lakers fan, and somebody else could be a New York Knicks fan or a Chicago Bulls fan. Okay, we have in sports rivalries, but let's let our Olympics be our Olympics where we can unite together. Because when we focus so much time on what divides us, it weakens us as a nation. And so I've kind of gone off there, but
going right on target.
Going back to where your original question was, we got to start focusing in. We got to stop teaching racism. Okay, we got to learn from our past. There are mistakes made in our past. We got to learn from it. But that does not mean we have to constantly make people victims. Okay. Right now in American, there is a lot of people who can become victims very easy to the technocracy that's going on right now. I have more problems than I care to count with what the problems I'm dealing with big tech. I've had emails that have been, email servers that have just all of a sudden decided that they're no longer going to allow me to use it. I've had attacks on my web hosting account. I've had people secretly mark me as spam and stuff like that. I mean, the daily headaches that we have. But I don't go out there and play the victim card every time that this happens, because that's not who I am as a person. I want to, I fight back, I overcome, I find ways around it, I find new tools to work. If they don't want my money, I go find someone else to take my money.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's too easy to just, I'm going to cry victim card and everybody comes around me. No, we're Americans. Frederick Douglass had every right to play the victim card. Every right. But he had success because he stepped above it. Every hurdle that was thrown at him, he stepped on it, and he stepped on it, and he stepped on it. And he had the influencer. He became an influencer of presidents. We got to stop teaching how evil America was. That can't be our focus. You can't train up a generation to hate the United States of America.
Yep.
I love the United States of America. I love the constitutional republic for which it stands. I understand that people have done evil things. People are doing evil things today. But the beauty of a constitutional republic is that we get to elect our officials and we get to change our future.
Yeah, I love that. Learn from the past and stop living in the past. And that's something that politicians need to stop putting us against each other and work with each other. And I just hate it when they do that. And children are vulnerable. They don't know any better. They don't know they're being manipulated. And that's what's sick.
It is. But you know what? I'm as I look at polling data right now, in the Hispanic community, the younger generation is more conservative than their parents and grandparents.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And actually, in the Caucasian, we're actually seeing that the younger generation is just as conservative as their parents and grandparents. There's actually starting to be a pushback that's going on. So even though we have tried for so long to, squeeze any sense of conservatism out of our kids through this education, they are finding ways to get the truth. And they are waking up. And it's quite interesting to look at the polling data that we're starting to see that kind of come out of the last 2 years. People in America are waking up that they do not want this totalitarian form of government. And it reminds me of a lot of what Reagan did. He just kept preaching freedom. And I had the opportunity to be in Moscow, Russia in 1992. And there wasn't a Russian that I talked to who did not understand what freedom was, and how special America was, because Ronald Reagan kept preaching that message of freedom. And that message of freedom and individual choice beat communism out of Russia. And the people of Russia knew what they wanted. I've had the opportunity to travel many countries around the world, I should say. And they understand, they still understand that United States of America, there's something special about it. And, I just wish more Americans really understood how special it is to live in a constitutional republic.
Yes.
Where you get to elect your officials that pass the rules that govern us. And for the last 2 years, we have seen an absolute attack on those freedoms.
Yes.
But you know what? I'm seeing mama bears arise up across the nation. I'm seeing people become frustrated by smash and grabs. I'm seeing people who go, wait a second, why am I paying $5 a gallon for gas right now? And, people are waking up that, wait a second, maybe we don't want this totalitarian form of government. Maybe we do not want this government controls every aspect of our life.
Yes.
Because as we start talking about freedom, as we talk about liberty, deep down inside each of us, we understand what it means to be a self-governing person. Every 2-year-old understands what it means to be a self-governing individual.
Mm-hmm.
Don't believe me? Ask a 2-year-old to go take a nap. Ask a 2-year-old to eat their broccoli when there's a chocolate chip cookie sitting right beside it. We are born with a desire to be free.
Yes.
And the current administrations, and I say administrations because we're talking about what's going on at the White House, what's going on in Sacramento, and what's going on in many cities, big cities, is a totalitarian, socialistic government that the chosen few get to make the rules. And we saw this last weekend that those rules don't apply to them, as Gavin Newsom, Eric Garcetti,
I know,
didn't have to wear their mask.
Just hold your breath.
Just hold your breath. We learned that holding a mask in your left hand evidently protects you.
Yeah.
Or being gracious because you don't have to wear a mask because you're gracious.
Yes.
The hypocrisy that we are seeing right there, where it's rules for thee but not for me.
Not for me.
You see the memes. Your streets on socialism, your schools on socialism.
Yes.
Your government on socialism. But your politician on socialism is all of a sudden these nice mansions. That's not the way how it's supposed to work. That's not the way good government works. And people are waking up. And I think you're going to see in 2022, you're going to see a wave of people coming to the polls and saying, I want freedom. Yes. I want freedom.
Yes, that is so wonderful. I was listening to, there was a request from the governing people in Mexico. They're requesting Bibles be sent for the school kids in Mexico. I'm not sure what part of Mexico. They want Bibles because they want the kids in Mexico to read the Bible and to read it publicly, because they found out that when the kids read the Bible in public, they have less crime and less stuff going on with the kids in school. When they're reading the Bible, God is changing their hearts. But yet here in America, we reject the Bible, being publicly read and shared in our schools.
I mean, how dare you teach a kid that they're not supposed to kill?
Exactly.
How dare you teach a kid that they shouldn't steal?
Yeah.
How dare you teach a young man that he should respect respect a woman rather than just take advantage of them for their personal sexual pleasure?
Yeah.
I mean, the Bible is full of stories of people who made mistakes. But it is sad. I was blessed with, first couple of years I was in a private Christian school, and where I had to read the Bible, and it does create a moral compass in you. But if you want to destroy America, if you want to destroy the Republic, one thing you have to do is destroy that moral foundation.
Yes.
Benjamin, they always like to point to people like Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson and say, well, they were deists. Okay. Well, they still, they actually had more religious beliefs than many Christians today.
Yeah.
I mean, Thomas Jefferson basically told his nephew, I want you to study the Bible, and I want you to figure out what you believe. He didn't say you must be a Christian. But he said,
Yeah.
you're going to study the Bible. You can study, Thomas Jefferson studied the Quran. He studied everything, and he
Yes.
figured out who he was and what his belief structure was. But, if you go look at those founding fathers in their quotes, they understood that the importance of a good government was a people that were self-governing. If all you do is say you have freedom to do whatever you want, it becomes a world of the strongest of the fittest. It just becomes, who's the strongest, they win, right? In order for a self-governing society to work, there has to be something that is checking you. And the founding fathers, yes, they gave you that liberty, but you had to have a moral compass behind it. COVID happened. I studied it because I was supposed to do an Ironman in Thailand, and I was going to go visit Hong Kong. And so I spent the time and I studied it, and it's like, okay, I'm middle-aged in extremely good condition. My chances, if I get it, are very low that I'm going to get it to begin with. But if I do get it, it's going to have minimal impact on me. I will survive this. So I ended up choosing going to Hong Kong and then going to Thailand, even though it was February of 2020. I was able to think for myself and understand the risk. But what I didn't do is then go visit my grandmother, because I loved my grandmother. And I understood that she was in a group that would be highly susceptible. So I waited until I knew a little bit more. I learned, how this thing, spread, and what you have to do, because I love my grandma. I had a moral compass that I wasn't gonna, yes, I was willing to go and do the race because I felt like it would be safe for me to do. But then I didn't just immediately say, well, I'm gonna go see grandma, because I wanted to make sure I kept my grandma safe. And that's, one of the important things that our founding fathers talked about, and why it's so important that we have freedom of religion. It's not freedom of religion is government should not be controlling your religion. We have the right to go to the church, the denomination that we want to, but they understood we need that freedom, because with that freedom, when we understand that there's a higher power, that's when you really have true liberty.
Yes.
Because true liberty is not getting to do what you want when you want to do it.
Right.
True liberty comes when you understand, okay, I have the ability to think. I look at the pluses, the minuses, and I make a decision, a rational decision. You know what? I have a heavy right foot. I like to drive fast.
Okay.
Okay. But does that mean I drive 200 miles an hour? Yes, I may drive a little bit faster than other people, but I drive within, I know what my abilities are. I know what the road conditions are. I know how wide traffic is, you don't drive 100 miles an hour on the I-5 at 7:30 in the morning or at 5:30 at night. Okay. You may drive 80 miles an hour on I-5 between LA and Sacramento at, in the middle of the night when there's no cars on it, type thing. You know what your conditions are, what your abilities are. If you are nearsighted, you don't drive fast. If you are colorblind, you may not be able to do stuff, but know what your abilities are. You don't put other people at risk. And so it's important to understand that liberty is not just doing what you want when you want. It's also understanding that there are consequences to you when you violate somebody else's liberty too.
Yes. Amen. Amen. Now, I was looking at that, and I'm sure you probably saw the study that John Hopkins did on on the lockdowns for COVID-19. I thought that was very interesting.
I'm not aware of that particular one.
Yeah, that just came out I actually sent it out, but yeah, they did a study on the lockdowns and found that they really were all for null.
Well, the thing is, I read the studies before or right as they locked down. The scientific study said that a partial lockdown would be worthless. In fact, it actually spreads it even more. Because what you do with a partial lockdown is you put more people in fewer places.
Yeah.
And so they actually become super spreader events type thing.
Mm-hmm.
When you shut down all the restaurants, but you allow everybody to go to the grocery store, more people are in the grocery store.
Yeah.
When you shut down the parks, all of a sudden you're dry, the places where people are allowed to, more people are going there.
Yes.
I live in Los Angeles. We have the San Gabriel Hills. They shut down parks. All of a sudden now people were out in the San Gabriel Hills where it used to be nobody. Now all of a sudden you had a whole bunch of people there. People, oh, well, we're going to shut down some beaches, but not all beaches. Now more people were at the beaches that were open.
Yeah.
And the scientific studies before we went into COVID said that if you want to have shutdowns, if that's going to be your policy, you basically had to lock down society so that nobody interacted with anybody for 10 months.
Oh,
10
impossible
months. You basically, I don't know about you, but I don't have 10 months worth of groceries in my refrigerator that I could have just stayed home for 10 months. You just can't shut down society.
No.
So what would have been better than partial shutdowns or stuff like that was actually, the government did everything wrong. If you went back and studied, and they knew it. That's what's weird is the science was there. They knew what they're doing was wrong, but it was a part of the political agenda
control and power.
To remove our Republican form of government, to remove power from our electeds and give it to the chosen.
Yep, they wanted control to control the people. And it was more about control than anything and power over people. And they're still using that control and power over people, which is sad. Now, electric cars. Are we going to be stuck with electric cars? I know they've changed the rules in California, getting rid of gas, and in so many years, no longer have gas cars in California, all electric. They don't have enough supply to even do that. I'm concerned about that. I don't know. Who knows if the world's even going to be here? Jesus might come back before, but what do you think about just all electric cars, electric everything, no gas, which God has abundantly blessed us with more gas and more petroleum than we can even shake a stick at. He gave it to us for a reason to use. So,
my favorite part is they're trying to move everybody to electricity when our electric grid here in California is absolutely in trouble. I mean, how many times are we?
That's a question I have for you about that electric grid. Hey, Mark, when you get in the Senate, you got to do something about protecting that electrical grid.
I mean, I had friends this last, back in December. They live up in the foothills, with the Gold Hills. They had a snowstorm come in. They were out of power for 2 weeks. 2 weeks. You can't, if everybody has to use electricity for their cars and you don't even have electric grid that is for today's society, we got problems. And then, let's look at the thing. Well, they're tearing down dams on the Klamath right now. I mean, that's sustainable energy that you're going to need if you're putting everybody there. Yeah. And then we haven't yet resolved the issue that these batteries, the mining that they have to do to make these batteries is having a major impact on the environment there. And so it's a political, unfortunately, electric cars have gotten to be a lot more peppier, a lot more, cool looking. Their range is getting a little bit better. Technology is going there, but it's like, oh, we got to get rid of gas because it's polluting, but they don't even look at the mining of the batteries, how that is actually, destroying the environment too. And it's like the lack of, where their decision making is so political.
Yeah, they don't have common sense.
Yeah, there's a big lack of CS right now.
Yeah. Now you talked about your Ironman. Now that was a lot of work competing in the Ironman competition. A lot of work. Now wait. Now over how many days? With the Ironman competition, over how many days is that done? Is that like I know the 26 miles is, that's for the race that you getting out there and running. But with the swimming and with the whole setup, is that over a certain number of days?
A full Ironman, which is 2.4 mile swim, 112 mile bike ride, and a 26.2 mile run. I did one last year in July in Coeur d'Alene, and I came in right around 13 hours.
Okay.
So it's all done one day. Now there are triathlons that are much, that stretch over a day, but generally speaking, most triathlons are all done in a day. Most of the triathlons that I do are what was called a half Ironman, which is 1.2 mile swim, a 56 mile bike ride, and a 13.1 mile run. And those are done between about 5-6 hours.
Oh, okay. That's a lot of work, a lot of preparation.
Yep, a lot of exercise, a lot of taking care of the body, they say.
Yeah. Now I know you ride your bike a lot. You still doing that?
Because I'm on the campaign trail right now, I'm not doing as much of it as I would like to do. I wish I could ride more, but every now and then I'll find a couple hours and just get on the bike and go for a ride.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's great. Well, I don't even know what else to talk about, but I'm just so thankful that you're running for the U.S. Senate. And I'm thankful that you're standing up for freedom. And that's why we're here on this podcast, trying to share with the audience about this, how special America is, how special this country is, how much we love this country, and to appreciate what we have here in America. Because we have something that other countries, they just don't have. And what they say, if you either appreciate it or you lose it. And we see what's happening with those who don't appreciate, what they've been given. And, God said, to whom much is given, much is required. And those who serve in public office are given a tremendous privilege of serving, but yet they squander it on things that don't even matter, which is sad. So we'll definitely keep you lifted in prayer, Mark, for your success.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Is there any final words you would like to share? How people can contact you, how they can help you in your campaign?
Yeah, I would encourage them to go to my website, markmeuser.com. That's MarkMeuser.com. You can also follow me on Facebook or on Instagram. I am on both of those platforms. And I would finally like to say, I have been on the front lines fighting for your rights, your liberties. And please help me take my fight for your rights from the courthouse to the U.S. Capitol.
Amen. Amen. God bless you, Mark. And I want to thank my audience, those of you who come and listen to this podcast. Please continue to listen and please continue to spread the word about DW's View Stand Up. And don't forget to subscribe to my podcast when they come out. And also, you can be a sponsor as well to this podcast. And don't forget to share this message with your friends and share it on your social media as well. And each week I have each time I come on this podcast, I have just a little message for each of you and something for you to do. and that is to stand up and to stand up for what is right. And join us next week. We'll have another guest. Guess what, friends? If we do not stand up for what we believe, who will? So stand up.